So good morning and welcome to the beautiful Cotswold Water Park. Here behind me is my Syndicate, and that's exactly what this feature is going to be about, syndicate fishing and how I personally approach the syndicate that I'm on now. The lake itself, 8 acres maybe, and I would guess at maybe somewhere around the 50-60 carp. At the right time of year, there's five or six 40s in here, up to mid to uppers, so there's some really good target fish to go at, and that's how I get my fix. I've worked my way through day tickets from an early age and now started fishing syndicates, both in Oxfordshire where I live and here in the water park, and this is my latest one. I've been here for about a year. I've been really lucky to have some good success. Like I said, for the lake itself and the size of the fish, it's a fantastic fishery, and the people here are really nice as well, so I've really enjoyed myself. This session then, we're getting into the start of autumn, so we're early to mid-September now. I came last night. Joe's kindly joined me from CARPology. He joined me this morning. I got down late last night, and I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit despondent. There was about 4 people on already, so my choices were limited. However, I went up the far end of the lake where there was nobody fishing, managed to find myself a few fish, dropped on there, and as hopefully you'll see in some of the footage that we caught last night, I managed to catch myself a lovely 40-pounder. Well, as I've just explained previously, now Joe has arrived. I told him about this one last night, as we are sat here now with a 40-pound 4-ounce mirror. A huge thank you has to go to the man currently behind the camera, which is Otto, one of the syndicate members here. He's come running round and kindly, before the cameras arrive, Joe arrives tomorrow, he's quickly nipped round and taken some audio and some visuals for me. Some fantastic pictures, but this one came a short while ago over a large bed of bait and those rigs that we'll talk about shortly. It's a new 40-pounder for the lake as well, so we're very, very pleased with that. Me and Otto have both recognised it as a fish we've both caught before, but it's got a lot bigger, so testament to the lake and testament to Otto for coming around and helping me out. You're probably thinking, why on earth did you move? You've caught 40, happy days, but I've come down the other end of the lake. This morning I was up early. I knew Joe was arriving around 10 o'clock, so I got up at 5, whacked the kettle on, and all I saw down this end were fish topping. I probably saw about 30 odd shows. There was a couple of lads here. One of them managed to net himself a nice mid-double, and the other chap's now left. So this morning I upped sticks, got round here, bivvy up first because we get a little bit of weird and wonderful weather. It's more like April, not September. Managed to get the shelter up, and now it's time to find some spots. I do know some from previous fishing, so I've got them jotted down on my phone. Whether they're still there or not, I don't know. I've not fished this swim for about 6 months. So I'm going to have a little lead about with a light lead, hopefully find some spots, and we'll go from there. So now we're in the swim. Like every start of the session really, whether it's a new swim or whether you've moved, like I have. Just having a bit of a lead about. That's not too bad actually, just having a bit of a lead about. I've got a set of reeds just to my right hand side here. I've got options and that's what I wanted. As we've already said, arrived last night, lucky enough to catch that fish. Most people would probably think you're mad for moving after catching such a lovely carp, but the amount of fish I saw down here this morning, and when Steve vacated the swim, it was a bit of a no-brainer. So just having a lead about. I've clipped up tight to the reeds. There's a small spot that I know from, again, this is the beauty of syndicate fishing. Having fished the swim before, you can earmark certain swims and certain spots. I've got them listed on my phone. Quick browse of that. Clipped up to 14 wraps. It might be that the depth is different. It's gone down 2 foot. We've had a very, very warm summer, or I might just be stood differently. I think it's probably just shy of 14, but again, I'll clip that up properly in a moment. I found the spot out in front as well. That's around 17, so I've got 2 options. It's a 2-rod limit here at the moment until the winter. So at the moment, I think we're looking good. I'm gonna have a few more casts about just to pinpoint the spot exactly. I'm not gonna fish the reeds at night. I think if we do get a fish during the day, hopefully for the cameras, it's gonna be hit and hold. It's a very small spot. I'll just sprinkle maybe a few boilers around it, little bright one in the middle, and hopefully we'll snare one. They tend to migrate into the reeds during the day. Funnily enough, I've just seen one top just around the corner. That's confidence boosting. And then at night and in the morning, you tend to catch your fish out in the open water. So I'm gonna carry on with this, and hopefully when I next see you, rods will be out. That's the one. And we'll be catching carp. Oh yeah, like that. Let's get these clipped up. So, found the spots, now it's time to talk rigs. It's getting towards late morning now, and if I'm honest, it's a typical slow motion Syndicate feel on here. Once the night and early morning bite time have passed, it almost pays sometimes to not have lines in the water, allow the fish to come in through the afternoon, browse about in the weed and in the reed bed to my right, and just chill out. I will chuck the rigs out shortly. We're going to go out and get some food as well. Come back and I'll get the rigs up against some structure, probably the reeds, just to try and winkle out a bite for the camera really. But normally, rigs wise, tactics wise, very similar to my day ticket fishing. I favour a certain approach, and you'll see in the two rigs that I'm about to show you, relatively short, sort of 6-7 inches or so, and I favour a slip D presentation on 99.9% of my rigs. This is a bottom bait or a wafter. I can't remember the last time I used a bait straight out the bag. It's not to say it doesn't work, it's just my personal preference. So this is actually a wafter, and I drill it out and put a little sight bob in there. I just put one of our little dumbbell barrels in there just to give it a little sight bob, and it sits the hook or the rig exactly like I'm showing you now, and it just wafts about above that carpet of feed, which I'll show you shortly. Also, if there's a little bit of debris on the bottom, close to reed beds and things, you're going to have detritus, and it's a little bit weedy as well. I've just gone for what I would class as something like a slip D rotary. Again, I favour that slip D on the back of the shank. That's a size 4 curve, big bit of metal, lovely little white sent from hell there, and it stinks as well. I've souped him up. And again, that just sits like so above any detritus and debris on the bottom. And that is essentially my approach. Like I said, really it doesn't vary too much from day tickets. I think that the overall feeling on here is that it's a little bit slower paced. Like I say, it's 8 acres or so. The stock level is relatively low compared to a day ticket. And you can just take your time. You don't have to chop from zigs to pop-ups to bottom baits. I don't use solid bags or method feeders or anything like that in here. That's not to say it wouldn't work. It's just my personal preference. But everything's just slower paced. Use what you're confident in. I'm very confident, as I've just shown you, in that sort of slip D type presentation on either a pop-up or a bottom bait. And just use good, strong terminal tackle, and you shouldn't go far wrong, or at least, hopefully we won't today. That's essentially it. Slower paced, nice and confident in what you're using, and hopefully you'll land a carp or two in your Syndicate fishing. Yeah, I don't want to take. I don't fancy that. So, in between the epic thunderstorms and downpours that we're getting, I just thought I'd take the opportunity to get some bait out. Earlier on, I popped the rods out just after midday, after nipping down the shop for some supplies. And there was a bit of a crosswind. It was actually quite a strong wind, and they didn't quite go how I wanted them. They were accurate, but not quite accurate enough. So I thought I'd take the opportunity. The lake's gone like a mill pond. It does that quite regularly between thunderstorms, and the opposite bank just looks black at the minute, so I'm going to get these out quick. But in terms of the bait itself, I'm going to put quite a hit out, I think. The birds are diving on it a little bit, so they'll maybe take half a spom or a spom. I'm going to put about 20 odd out. These fish, they're big for a reason. They like bait. It's the time of year for it. We're coming into September. They're getting on the grub. So I've just got a healthy mix in there of lots of boilie, chops, holes. There's some corn in there and a range of different size pellets. I will start to add a little bit of particle at times, certainly through the winter. But at the moment, I'm just giving them lots of grub. And I also emphasise the use of liquids as well. Loads of liquid in there. The lake itself is quite deep, so I like having lots of liquids to bring them down, up through the water columns. That one hasn't opened, you devil. Why is it that they always hit the spot and never open? So yeah, where were we? Bait. Nice simple mix, big flash of lightning on the far bank. So I'm going to get these done and take my 12 foot of carbon out of the sky. That was a massive flash of lightning over there. Huge. So as we come into the evening here on the Syndicate, I just thought I'd delve a little bit deeper into my sort of history with Syndicate fishing, why I enjoy it so much, and maybe pass on a little bit of advice as well. Syndicate, I started, as most of us do, on day tickets, etc. And sort of in my sort of mid-20s, around 10 years ago now, I started delving into Syndicate fishing and trying to become more target driven. I just found that that's something that I really enjoyed, targeting specific carp in specific lakes. Let's face it, there's so many carp lakes now that you could fish every day of your life and still not get through them. But Syndicate fishing just allows essentially a different string to your bow. Each water's different, and I like getting into that mindset and finding different lakes and different niches, and it develops your angling as well, or I certainly found it has. Syndicate fishing then, and why? The lakes itself, I mean, I look back on my own syndicates, what sort of, I've probably been on half a dozen or so now, but a couple really stick out in my mind. There was one home pool on the Chad Lakes complex in Gloucestershire. It's very small, very intricate, 17 fish in an acre. And there was a specific carp in there that I really wanted. And it's run, the syndicate's run over the course of the winter. It's so small that you can pretty much see the whole lake, and you can begin to learn each individual carp, the way they feed, where they move, where they want to be at certain times of day. And you're sat at work thinking, I know where it'll be. It'll be under that tree. And you just get into sync with it. And thankfully, I ended up catching the carp that I wanted. That was a fish called 𝘁𝗵𝗶𝗀, a lovely old mirror. Then you contrast that with somewhere like Farrier's, which was essentially a glorified day ticket. And there was a lot of big carp in there. And it was more about seeing how other anglers approached the lake and how I might be able to adopt some of their tactics that were successful and ignore some tactics that weren't. So that was very different. And again, even more so on here, it's just a very different lake. And each stage of that, like I say, not all of us are going to be lucky enough to have a syndicate close by or even afford one, because I do understand that, you know, they are a bit of money. However, if you work out over the course of a season, if you're like me, I'm very lucky I get a night a week to go fishing. That's whether that be between work or on a rest day, I can manage to get out. And over the course of a season, it works out at quite cheap, if I'm honest. Day tickets now are upwards of 20, 30, 40 quid for 24 hours. So sort of going back to what I was sort of saying, for me, it's all about learning different lakes. And if you're lucky enough to be on a syndicate, I tend not to stay on them for too long. I'll do 2-3 seasons on one, learn the lake, hopefully catch the fish I want, which thankfully I've managed to do, and then move on. Getting on waiting lists, etc. I'm on about 3 or 4 waiting lists, but each of those have got a different waiting period. One might be 2 years, the next might be 5 or 10 years. So you've always got to have something lined up. And I think to that extent, you're constantly progressing your angling. When you move on to a new lake, you know, it's a blank canvas, and you've got to learn everything again, and you learn the way they feed, and they might prefer big beds of bait, singles, pop-ups, bottom baits, and it's all starting again, and it basically reinvigorates that excitement for fishing. So I really would encourage it. If you've not tried it, do it. Take things that you've learned and are confident in from your day ticket angling and your progressive nature of carp fishing, and just get out there and give it a go. There's some fantastic syndicates. Club waters are quite similar, can be busier, but club waters are quite similar because you're fishing the same waters, you're with the same people. I've got to admit, here is, I always say to Mike and Mark, it's a breath of fresh air, because the other anglers that are on here, there's not too many, 25, 30 odd anglers. It's brilliant. There's a really good vibe. Everybody's friendly, and you talk to each other. People will give their spots away. Oh, I'm 17 wraps there, mate. I'm using 20 spons of bait, because no one really bothers. It's not as competitive. You're all here for the same reason. And a bit like Otto did last night, I had a nice fish on the bank and he was the first one round, one, to congratulate me, two, take the pictures. That's exactly how fishing should be. Fun, lots of excitement when everybody catches, and just not pressured. So I think I've waffled on long enough about how I like syndicate fishing. Give it a go, use what you're confident in from your day ticket angling, and just get out there and try it. You won't be disappointed. So coming into the night time then, it's about 6 o'clock or so now. Sun's just starting to set. There's another big old rain cloud coming towards us as well, so we're probably going to get damp. But I'm going to move the right-hander away from the reeds. It's probably my best chance today up against a bit of structure. There was a fish top a bit further round, but sadly nothing's come to that rod. I'm more confident of tonight. It is traditionally a bite, a night-time bite in terms of this venue. Normally between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. If you get one early, 8, 9 o'clock, then you've got a real good chance of catching another. Multiple bites are sometimes hard to come by, although I have had them, but normally you're expecting one fish a night. The open water is going to be the best chance for that. Not only that, but I don't think it's safe for me to fish up against the structure being so far away. So I'm going to pop some bait in. I'm going to redo the rods. I've already popped some bait out long on the left-hander. The right-hander is probably going to receive a dozen or so spoms, maybe a kilo and a half of bait. And we'll see what tonight brings. I'm relatively confident. I've seen a few fish. There's a few more starting to move off the back of the wind, but the wind's picked up now, pushing in towards me. We've got a nice weather front coming in. It's low pressure. I haven't really got any excuses, so there's no pressure. But hopefully through the night, you'll see us with a carp or two. If not, you'll see you in the morning. Well, I don't know what the time is.
5 to 3.
Joe has politely informed me it's 5 to 3. And I'm attached to what feels like a scamp. Sadly, I lost one earlier. It's quite weedy out in front. Oh, pop this down here. Like I was saying, sadly it's a bit weedy out in front. And about 10 minutes or so into a fight, a fish just locked me up and yeah, sadly did me. But this fish is one of the stockfish in the lake. And is very small, but she will do. Oh, there we go. Oh, we've got one. Like I say, one of the small stockfish, but it will do. I think we've gone from maybe one of the larger fish in the lake last night to one of the smallest tonight, but we've caught one all the same. Happy days. Well, from the first night of one of the largest fish in the lake to the second night to one of the smallest. Very active little fella. Calm down. This one weeded me up as well. Thankfully we plucked him out, I don't know, maybe just about double figure common. Like I say, earlier on in the night I'd sadly lost one, about 10:30. We're probably just after 3 o'clock now. There is still chance of one more in the morning. There's a few fish still showing out there, but yeah, as lovely as you are, it'd be nice to get a slightly bigger one for the cameras. But funnily enough, we were speaking earlier with Mark about the stocking programme for the lake. This is one of the new ones, a common in a lake predominantly full of mirrors and is well needed. So it's very nice to meet you, but I'm going to slip her back and hopefully catch one of her larger brothers or sisters. Right, you join us just in the last throes of the second fish of the evening.
well, third fish of the evening. Sadly, we lost that first one. Hopefully the second one that's landed. Come on, don't muck about now. And what looks like a much better fish is hopefully about to hit my spreader block. Come on, take your time. Come on. No. There we go. Bit of an orthodox netting, but that is a much better carp. Oh, that will do. That will do. Pressure's off a little bit now. That really did tug very hard towards them reeds, so I'm happy that we've got that one. That looks a nice fish. Got me out of bed again. It's probably an hour before first light. Stood here in my rather fetching Ralph Lauren flip-flops. Oh yeah.
Better than Crocs.
That's it. Better than Crocs. I'll be sponsored by Polo this time next year. But yeah, that's a much better carp. So really pleased with that. Let's get this rod sorted and get her out and take a look.
Well, the bite at 5 AM this morning turned out to be a little bit bigger than I thought. And not only that, but an element of deja vu. This is actually the fish that I caught on the first night. I weighed it then. I'm not going to now. I've literally just nipped him out on the bank. Been sat in the sling for about an hour. Caught just before first light, about 5:30. She went 40 pound 4 on the first night, so there's no need to weigh her again. A couple of stills with Joe. It's mad how these things happen. That's never happened to me before. Same fish twice within a 24-hour period. So we've gone from one of the biggest fish in the lake to one of the smallest and back to the same. All very odd. Same rig, same bait, just completely the opposite end of the lake. I think we might have to call this fish yo-yo, Mark said last night, because it's up and down in the weights from mid 30s to low 40s. So she's obviously a female. And not only that, but she's yo-yoing from one end of the lake to the other as well. So very odd, but I'm going to pop her back, minimise any stress on her. And we'll talk maybe through that rig that you seem to quite like a lot.
Calm down.
Well, thank you very much for coming to see me again. There we go. Oh. It's a very strong fish.
Not a very happy one either.
So after that fish took a liking to my rig twice in the space of 24 hours, I thought I'd show you the winning combination. This is a rig, as we spoke about yesterday, prior to getting into this new swim, that I've probably used exclusively really for probably 6 or 7 years now. It's a sort of my take on a slip D. It's a combi style, so I use a stiff sort of boom section, as it were, and then a more supple braided section on the end towards the hook. So the stiff section then starting from sort of what would be the lead end, I create a loop using crimps, and the material itself is actually a monofilament leader that Avid do. I think it's our 55-pound version, 50-pound version. And it was invented really for big snaggy waters over on the continent, but I've found it quite useful as a boom material. So I use that, and again, underneath the putty that you can see there, there's just a small loop, again created with a crimp, and I just tie the end section there, which is essentially our captive braid, decoated, so you take the outer coating off and just expose that sort of thin, inner, more supple material inside the coated braid, and I just tie it to that small loop. A small section, I don't know, inch or so, half an inch, and again there you've just got a small amount of our medium shrink tube that's shrunk just over the eye of a size 4 curve. On the back there I create a simple D. What that allows is the little hook swivel there to slide up and down. Like I said, I use wafters, and it just sits exactly like I'm holding it now. So the bend of the hook sits on the lake bed, and that's, well, has nailed that fish twice in the space of 24 hours. But I've found the hooking sort of, the potential for hooking is far greater, as it were, spit my words out, when the hook is presented like that. I prefer it like that rather than flat. It's just as efficient. However, for me, I prefer it just like so. Again, personal preference. So that's the rig. Lengthwise, it depends what you're fishing over, of course. I do use them in solid bags, obviously without the boom section. I just go supple braid all the way through, so 2-3 inches. Be quite happy to use it over weed and debris and go longer. I showed you briefly the fact that I would utilise that slip D in a sort of slip D rotary style rig if I was using pop-ups as well. So it is quite versatile. But for me, this is my go-to, especially on here. 6 to 7 inches on a helicopter style presentation. The slip D in a combi style. So that brings us to the end of the session. It's been a really good 24 hours with Joe. Big thanks to him for coming all the way up from Somerset to join me here in the Cotswolds. It's been really good fun. I've really enjoyed it. It's been a bit wacky catching the same fish twice. But again, stunning fish, as I'm sure you could see. Gives you a really good insight into certainly this syndicate, but syndicate fishing in general. We've gone from probably one of the smallest to the largest fish in the lake twice. Sadly bumped one last night as well, but you can probably see from the bags under my eyes, I haven't got a lot of sleep in the last couple of nights. So I'm looking forward to going home, seeing the family and having some rest. But yeah, like I say, I've really enjoyed it. It has been busy, to be fair, the last month or so. I've been on my own, the joys of syndicate fishing, and it's actually, there were 6 on last night, so it's really busy, probably the busiest I've seen it. So hopefully I've inspired you to maybe think about syndicate fishing, or if you're already on a syndicate, think about your fishing and how you're approaching it. And yeah, thanks very much for watching. I've really enjoyed it, and yeah, we'll see you next time.